A Danish author, upcoming author. I'm 72 years old, and I have published 2 books, both with the title. It's Volume 1 and Volume 2. It's called Along Trails of Truth. And the first is spiritual autobiography, spanning my lifetime from 3.5 years old and until 65 years of age. And the other is a kind of a companion because it's a clarification of a spiritual writing, very ancient spiritual writing, called the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Atlantean. And as it turned out, when I started writing my book back in 2017, I also studied this ancient writing. And so what is remarkable is actually the resonance between my experiences and the experiences you can read about in that ancient writing. So that's my introduction, briefly. It's about spiritual awakening, you can say. It's a kind of a blend of my personal journey with my spiritual journey, so to speak. So both are in the book, but the focus is on presenting the spiritual journey to other spiritual seekers who would want to know about an example of a full lifetime almost from one of their fellow seekers. So that's the whole purpose of my book. It's dedicated to seekers of truth. Well, from back in childhood, my first memory is when I was 3.5 years old, and I went on my tricycle down to a lake nearby where we live on my own. And at the lake, I had a very spiritual experience, like a unity experience, an out-of-body experience where I've experienced kind of the oneness of nature and the divine kind of coming through. So a transcendence experience, basically. And I grew up in you would say, a dysfunctional family. There was a lot of violence. And when I was 5.5 years old, I decided to close my heart, basically. So the rest of my journey has been, about how to open my heart again. And that, that journey went through a lot of, ups and downs and different experiences. And then in 2011, I had another unity experience. I went for a run to a forest and a park and down to a strand and back again. And then I got very quiet and kind of went into a meditative state and felt an expansion that was beyond something I have ever experienced before. And so that was another transcendence experience. And then the 2 experiences from 3.5 to and this one that I'm talking about, they kind of resonated. And there in the park, I basically, saw my life looking back with the milestone starting from 3.5 years old and onwards. And I kind of connected the dots and saw, wow, this I could actually write a book about. And that would be a great thing to do for myself, because I will kind of be more clear about my whole, my whole journey of life. It would be very therapeutic for me. And then also I thought at the same go that I could share this experience with other spiritual seekers. So that was the starting point. Yeah, at least you can say that traumatic experiences were basically at the baseline, and then an urge to free myself from all the imprints of this. Yeah, so you can say that in one sense, yeah. But I think maybe you can also say that I have, even before I came into this life, I have probably had lives where I was a spiritual seeker. So I had this urge for spiritual seeking also, all through my life. Do you want me to tell you about experiences? I had a very profound experience when I was 10 years old that really spurred my spiritual journey big time. And so I didn't feel that my parents really understood me well. So I was in search for, meaning of life and where did I come from? Where am I supposed to go? And then on my way to school, I had a very profound experience where I was kind of connected to a master or met by a master. I was walking to school and on quiet roads, and then when I turned a corner, I saw this purple haze 5 meters above the ground in the air, and then I sensed some kind of male person in the middle, and then after that I went into a trance, and I had visions of what would people I would meet in my life and so on, and this master, you have to imagine he was on an astral travel somehow, and he sent a beam of, I would say it felt like a beam of love into my heart. But basically he was doing some cleaning and transmission. And so when I came out of this trance, I continued my journey towards my school. And I was kind of in a high, like I would compare to, having attended a meditation seminar or something, the whole day through. And then on my way back, I was very curious about who is this master that I sensed, because I couldn't see him clearly. And then not far from the other place where I had this experience, I went into even a deeper trance. And in this trance, I was asked if I would want to join a meditation movement in the future. And of course, as a 10-year-old boy, I didn't know anything about meditation really. But at that level that I was kind of drawn up by this master, I knew exactly what he was talking about. So this was also an out-of-body experience. Like I was basically finding myself in a bright kind of space 5 meters above my body. And yeah, so I asked him questions and got answers, and eventually I came back in my body. And a 10-year-old boy cannot contain this kind of experience, so a lot of it was repressed and only showed up much later in my life when I started heartfulness meditation, 25 years later actually. So that experience when I started heartfulness meditation, I think in 9 months I actually realized who this master was. He was not alive at that time; he has passed. But there was another master, living master, that I was told to follow actually when I had this experience. And so a lot of my journey is connected to the benefit of heartfulness meditation. And that is, pardon, I don't really understand what is. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the benefits and, the experience I've had through my life has been like the whole spiritual urge and seeking has been kind of fueled by doing heartfulness meditation. That's how I would express it. It's very easy to learn and it's free to learn. Doesn't cost anything. They can go to heartfulnessmeditation.com or .org, sorry, and they can find a trainer near where they live, and they can connect to the trainer and ask to be introduced. That's one way of doing it, and it's very simple. In my experience, awakening is a kind of gradual process. And so I think meditation is indispensable in that journey. And because you need to kind of introspect, and you need to search. It's an inner journey, so to speak. You need to look inside yourself and connect with your inner being. And in that process, you become more aware over time, and you would understand that you will get to understand that you need also to change yourself. Like, it's a transformative journey. And so if you meditate, great. But you also need to do character work in order to kind of moderate your own being and align with the divine in yourself, so to speak. So it's not happening automatically. You need to use your will. You need to have an urge to be a seeker, and basically have some curiosity about who are you, where did you come from, and where are you going. So that has been my outset, so to speak. And yeah. Yeah, I told you how I was inspired to write, and then actually it's a bit of a funny story, because I lived in Ireland at the time, and my wife asked me to join her with a psychic coming from UK, and that was back in 2009. And this psychic told me that I was going to write a book, actually 2 books. And she said the first would be a fiction and the other would be an autobiography. And it didn't make sense to me at all at the time. I didn't understand that. And her prediction was 1.5 years out in time. And when when I actually, 1.5 years later, I had this experience I told you about in the park, this unity experience. And that's when I actually decided to write. And then I started writing on a fiction, because I thought the experience I have had, nobody would believe at the time. And I wrote 30 pages, and then I realized this is not working. So I put it on a shelf. And then only later in 2017, 6 years later, I consulted a Vedic astrologer. And I didn't tell her anything, but she basically told me that one of my life purposes was to write a book. And then I decided, okay, this time I'm just making a very honest autobiography without fiction at all. And so I started 3 days later. And I basically, I'm not educated in writing as an author. So I basically had this idea, I'll just tell my story chronologically, as if I was, in an interview, so I just did that. And I finished 3 years after with both, volume 1 and volume 2. And then it was edited, with a friend of mine. And then I wrote in Danish. So basically it was translated by a professional into English. And yeah, so that was my writing process. And I've learned a lot during that, also how to do a better job next time. But as I said, I was not an educated author. And so you have to start somewhere and learn by doing. Can you repeat that? Sorry, I didn't clearly understand. What I was taught. A spiritual journey is not. It's not a topic that you can kind of has as a kind of hobby or on the side of your life. It is your life. So it's basically the attitude you have towards life, and your interest in actually understanding what is the purpose of life, to get deeper into that understanding. That was the driving factor for me. I was always curious about what's around the next corner, because since I was a child, like from 6 years old, or even before, I had these transcendence experiences, and I didn't understand them straight away, and then some years would pass, and then I would have kind of a possibility to understand them, and then another experience would come. So basically, these experiences worked as stepping stones for me. And since I am very curious about, what is it all about, then I would always look further, and then I would have further experiences that would propel me along the journey. So, yeah, from about age of 6, I had experiences with connection to my spiritual guides, and we all have a spiritual guide. And then but that was experienced very intuitively, like an inner kind of sense. And later in life, when I actually joined heartfulness meditation, I had similar experiences, but even more clear, so to speak, and sometimes even voices like I would hear inside myself. So I learned actually through life that it's possible to intercommunicate with other beings, like a spiritual master. And so sometimes I would wonder about something, and I would kind of direct my intention towards the master, and then I would ask the question to him, and I would get an answer straight away. I didn't have many of those experiences, but those experiences I had were very important for me, and like gave me direction on my spiritual journey. So to me, it felt kind of natural. There was nothing kind of extraordinary about it, but I would sometimes be surprised, how. So it meant something to me, and it helped me keep on my spiritual path, so to speak. Like it would be like confirmation for me of where am I and where am I going. So I can give you an example if you want.
Yeah. Then give
For instance, I joined a seminar, a big seminar actually, in Tirupur in India. A lot of people meditating, I think 50,000 or so. And then when I came back from this seminar, during the seminar, I've actually experimented with being in a non-judgmental state. And so I didn't judge anything, not myself, not anyone else, not any situations. And I seem to manage that very well. And you see, it's actually beneficial not to be judgmental when you are on a spiritual path. So then I came home, and I wanted my master's opinion on that. So I connected to him inside, and he said, "You did very well in Tirupur. Only now you have to expand your heart further." So that was the kind of direction I got there. And it was also a confirmation that, judgment is something you should abstain from when you are on a spiritual path. You should learn how to abstain for it. So that was a very clear example for me, of this kind of intercommunication.
All right. Thank you so much. So you mentioned you have another book, right, Daniel?
You were breaking up here, pardon?
I said you mentioned that you have another book.
Yeah.
There are 2 books, right? So what's the other book?
So the other book is, you see, I started the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Atlantean. It's a very ancient writing, dating back like 36,000 years before our time. And it's derived from some tablets that were found, or that was basically written on by Thoth. And Thoth was a priest king from Atlantis, and he basically immigrated to what is today called Egypt. In ancient time, it was called Kem, when actually Atlantis sank into the ocean. So he had his priesthood with him, and so basically, Thoth is giving directions for how to spiritually evolve. So this is his message for the time we live in now. Also giving directions, and his main point is to follow our hearts. So he has the same emphasis on the heart as you would find in heartfulness meditation. And so it intrigued me that there was such a huge resonance between the two spiritual directions, so to speak. And initially, I didn't actually wanted to include it in my book, but I was basically prompted to do it. And then I decided to do 2 volumes, so it was a separate volume. So,
Okay.
So the resonance basically make it very interesting to compare the content of the 2 books. The topic of the 2 books. They have the same things in them: meditation, masters, out of body experiences, astral travel, even UFO experiences, and so on. Like regression to previous lives, and all these things are in my book also, in the first volume. But Thoth mentioned all these in his Emerald Tablets also. So in a way, this comparison kind of what do we say? Like it's a confirmation to both books, like the experiences mentioned in both books. That these experiences are, they have always been there, and they will always be there as a possibility. And my point here is that the foundation of spiritual journeys is self-experience. And this is what my books are all about. It's about self-experiences.
All right. Thank you so much, Daniel. I really enjoyed this. Your books are about self-experiences and the best way people can learn from other people's experience. And Daniel, I must say, the way you speak like a spiritual master.
Well, I don't want to be considered a spiritual master. I'm not a guru, but I would like to be seen as maybe kind of a fellow seeker that share his experiences with other seekers. Yeah.
I thought that is what a spiritual master is.
Yeah, but I don't consider I'm not yet a master, so so there's a long way to go, I think. Yeah, I mean, we don't know how highly we are developed. That's for a master to tell us, but the important thing is that we are on the journey, and because the journey is endless, and the journey here on Earth should end for all of us with kind of being freed of karmic wheel, and graduate in this school of life here on Earth, and then eventually move on to other tasks on a higher level. So. So I don't want to take pride of being talking as a spiritual master, but of course I've been inspired also by talks of spiritual masters.
I said, is there something else you would like to share with my guest?
I would say that the most profound kind of expression, or what I've been told by my master, was a sentence where he said to me, and this was also an inner communication, he said to me, from the heart, from within the heart, with the heart, everything is possible. So that's basically the essence of the spiritual journey. It's an evolution of your own heart. And I think that's a very simple but very profound statement. So I
Wait,
would like to share that
Daniel,
with the
please.
listeners. Yeah.
So what do you mean by inside the heart, everything is possible?
Yeah. From the heart, from within the heart, with the heart, everything is possible.
What does that mean?
What does it mean? It means your spiritual journey is from the heart, from within the heart, with the heart. It's basically developing your heart to become in tune with your divine essence. So it's, of course, alluding to the spiritual journey.
Guys, thank you so much, Daniel. This has been very, very exciting, talking about your spiritual journey and your book as well with my audience. And a lot of people are on their journey individually in one way or the other. And I hope they can take one or two from this conversation and run with that. So, Daniel, for those who would like to connect with you and your book, try to get your book, how can they do that?
They can go to my website, danielwinrose.com. And from there, they can find links to social media. I'm quite active on social media, especially on Instagram and TikTok, and also LinkedIn, and a little bit of Facebook also. But I have a lot of videos out on TikTok and Instagram where I actually answer questions, about spirituality. So they're like small 2 minutes videos, and I'm delighted to answer those questions, and I think people can learn a lot from just listening to this and seeing these video clips. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Daniel. This has been so very, very wonderful and exciting. And I really hope my listeners can take something from here. And you guys, make sure to check out Daniel's work and connect with Daniel as well. It's been a pleasure having you guys today, Daniel. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
And thanks to my audience as well. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Take care and make sure share this episode with someone out there who you might think might need this. Thank you, Daniel, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.